and welcome to our Point of View talk show. We are so glad that you could join us this evening. This evening, we're going to be talking about domestic violence awareness. And before we get started, I'd like to go ahead and introduce everyone. First, we have one of the other hosts. We have Captain Eric Jackson, or retired Captain Eric Jackson. Hello, Captain Jackson.
Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing on this wonderful day?
Good. And next, we have Miss Jen.
Hello, good evening. Hope everybody's having a great Wednesday. Great to see you. What's up, Cat?
And our special guest this evening is Miss Veda Brown. Miss Veda is the founder of Sisters Empowerment Network Incorporated. Hi, Miss Veda, how are you?
I am doing wonderful. How are you guys this evening?
We're doing good.
Yeah, wonderful.
Good,
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for joining us. Now, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about the organization?
Yes, I'll be happy to. Again, my name is Veda Brown. I am the founder and executive director of the Sisters Empowerment Network Incorporated. We are a not-for-profit, volunteer-based community organization that provides resources and services for victims and survivors of domestic violence. We have been incorporated since 2003, and we work in the Clayton County and surrounding communities, bringing education and awareness about the impact of domestic violence and to teach our communities how that they can be of service to help others in need.
Okay. So, Ms. Veda, can you explain to us what is domestic violence?
Domestic violence is a pattern of behavior that one partner controls the other. It could be starting very subtle and it could last over time. Usually it escalates and it's mainly about power and control, one partner over another. And so that's one of the main things. And as the relationship progresses, sometimes women or men are able to get out and escape, or sometimes it may last indefinitely.
Okay, so you said women or men. So that means that a man can be a victim of domestic violence as well, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we want to make that clear. Men are also sometimes victims, but we talk about women because our organization is a women's organization. But nevertheless, no one deserves to be abused.
You're right. You're right. All right. So can you tell us, why did you start the organization?
I grew up in an abusive home. My mother, I watched her for years being abused by my father. And I thought it was something that was going on with me. And I remember as a child trying to do everything possible for my dad so that he would not feel he would have to abuse my mother. And growing up, I learned and became a people pleaser because it seemed that nothing I did would help. And so growing older, I wanted to become an agent for change and help other families, especially children, because I think when we talk about domestic violence, we don't realize the impact and the effect it has on children. And so that's why I wanted to start. I got permission from my mom, if I could share our story. And so here we are today, almost 20 years later, advocating for women and children that's in these situations.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you said you went through it, or you saw your mom go through it as you were growing up. But now that you look back at it, can you tell us what some of the signs were for domestic violence that you saw?
Well, in our family, I can tell you what went on in our family. My dad was an alcoholic as well. And I know one of the things that my mom, he would abuse her because he would stay out late and he would come home and his dinner was cold, but it was late and we were all in the bed. though this is one of the stories that stand out. And so he would come in screaming, shouting, yelling, and that was one of the times that he would abuse her, about the food situation. And so she tried to create different measures, and it was never good enough, because anybody that knows an abuser, escalation process, because it's about power and control, he will only go to the next thing. And so I watched him do some of things like disable her car, and to make her lose time off work. And when she worked in the evening times, and he would, when she went to work at 5, at 5:30, he was putting my sister and I out on the street. And we were pretty sheltered. We didn't know, so we had to learn things really fast. Ride the bus across town to my uncle's house for safety. Just it's hard to talk about, because it's something that you never forget. And I still find myself getting somewhat emotional, because those were some of the scariest times of our lives, because we didn't know what to do. But we did learn that these are tactics to disrupt my mother. And so we tried to learn not to call her and say, "Oh, Mom, he's putting us outside again." And so we just kind of learned to try to do things on our own. But praise God, my mother, she endured the abuse for years, but she was saving her money. She was making a plan. And one day she came home and said, "You know what, you guys, pack your things, we're leaving." And, and what made that decision for her urgent is that my oldest brother came home one day, because he worked with my father, and he went straight to the kitchen to grab a knife. And he said, "This is the day I'm going to kill him." And she knew then, at that point, she had to get out in order to save him, because he could have been in prison for the rest of his life. And so I like to tell people, your family members and friends, we have to be notice the things that they're going through, like change of behavior. They may become very withdrawn, isolate themselves from family members and friends, and they're in fear. A lot of times they can be threatened, and they can say that they will harm us. I know my dad will always tell my mom he was going to do something to have us arrested. And of course, she didn't want that. So it's constant fear, and you have to constantly think about things to understand the dynamic of these people, if you can, if that's possible, even, because they come up with so many different tactics that you can't hardly keep up, or you have to keep your eyes open. So the warning sign, if you see anyone that's kind of reserved, if you will, if they're a friendly, bubbly person, and all of a sudden they're reserved. If you see them in the summertime, for an example, with their collar up, or something that they should be wearing in the wintertime, in the summer, those are some of the things. And not wanting to talk about their partner, so they'll try to keep you away from that information. So those are some of the things, and it could be a lot of different warning signs that you just have to know your family member or your friend and pay close attention. And for the most part, when you see a change, even if it's not domestic violence, then check in with them to make sure, so that you can start to intervene and help them get the help that they need.
Wow. That was a lot. That brought tears to my eyes in the beginning.
Mhm.
No, I was holding back tears, and it's been years, but my father, I still can't understand. I still can't understand why someone would abuse us and threaten us and um, put us out on the street. And it was all to hurt my mother,
Mhm.
Mm,
not realizing what he did to his children.
mm,
Did your father ever apologize to you?
No, he did not. He remarried, and the abuse escalated. He would pull uh, guns out on her. So it went to another whole level, and she was in fear as well. So I don't know if he understood. One of the things that we need to talk about, particularly in our community, um, it's almost like you hear us talking about generational curses, if you will.
mm, mhm.
And sometimes they think it's the norm, so it's a pattern of behavior that continues without talking about it. One thing that I wish now is that my dad was still living, and I think that I would have enough courage now to tell him what he did to his family
Mm.
with his abusive behavior. Unfortunately, he's not here anymore, and we have to live with the damage. Um, each one of us, each one of my siblings, we have different issues that affected us because of his behavior, and so this organization not only help others, but it's a healing for me as well.
Mm.
I was gonna ask that too. How has your org and I, gosh, my heart just pours out hearing this. However, there seemed to be light at the end of the tunnel by way of this organization. So how has this organization not only helped others, but how has it helped you be able to move past it? So it's clearly it's still affecting you, and I could imagine this happened many years ago, but it still affects you in some way. But that the organization that you work with certainly seems to help make things better. So just how does that work for you?
Well, for me, um, I understand it's very important. It's very important to be a listening ear, to be a friend, to be understanding, because oftentimes people don't understand these women are the experts in their lives. And so, we may think is not a good choice, it may be the only choice. And so, one of the things that I'm proud of about this organization is that I want to embrace their feelings. I want to share with them, some of my experiences. I love being transparent because it gives them the sense of they're not in this alone. They haven't been the only one that's experienced these abusive behaviors. And the reward for me, Mr. Eric, is that when we help a woman transition out of the relationship because of us, our help and our support and our understanding, it makes me stronger. It makes me want to go forth and help the next woman. And so I believe that God put me on this path for a reason. Sometimes we have to go through things. So he's was setting me up for a time as this, knowing that so many women out here um, need these services of Sisters Empowerment Network. The shelters have their place, but our organization, um, we like to believe that we're a friend, and we want to hold their hands, and we want to comfort them when they just seem to think that they can't make it another minute. And we're here to say, yes, you can. And
Right.
it has given me the courage to answer your question. It has given me the courage to say, yes, I can move forward. Yes, I can survive too.
Mhm. Now, Ms. Vita, firstly, I have a question, but firstly, I just want to say thank you for your service. Thank you for what you do, because we have, we have our first responders, our, police, fire, like retired captain. We have our hospital, healthcare workers, and then we have people like you as well. And you are just as important, because your impact in the community is one that is, a lot of people don't even understand the type of work that you do. So I just want to say thank you. You're truly a hero, and you deserve your flowers. My question, while you were speaking a few minutes ago, you talked about family and friends paying attention to the signs and seeing what's going on in the lives of our loved ones. In the event that we see a sign, what do we do? How do we intervene? What's the first step you take to help someone when you start to see those signs?
Okay, the first thing you want to do is acknowledge that you are concerned about what's going on with them without judgment. Listen, pay attention, um, offer to help safety plan. That's so important. The safety planning aspect, opposed to women leaving and not having a plan. And so what you can do is play a vital role by paying attention, asking her, what is it that you want to do? And help her document, help her gather her important papers, help her to um, find shelter, or a lot of times with the organization, I may ask if they're not from Georgia, do they have a support system in another area? And then we will put them on a plane, a bus, or whatever we need to do to get them to that support system. Be understanding. If she wants to file a temporary protective order, you can be instrumental in knowing the process so that you can help her if that's what she needs. You can go to court with her and sit beside her when she's going for the hearing. So there are so many things that you can do, but it starts with asking her, what does she want to do? And believe her and walk with her through the process.
Ms. Vita, can you explain why some women will not leave the relationship, or some women will go back to that relationship?
Yes, ma'am. 99% of women remain in relationships because of their finances.
Mm.
That is one of the most important things that people don't understand. And you ask, well, why doesn't she just leave? So for some women, it's not that cut and dry. I wish that it was. But when you're faced with eviction, nowhere to stay, you're having to live in a car with your children, then sometimes you have to make those decisions. Sometimes they believe that they can change the abuser, because none of us want to believe that we've fallen in love with someone that would hurt us. Some fear of retaliation, or if not calling anybody out, but a high profile perpetrator, then they have to protect them of fear, because now you have a whole system that's intimidating that victim as well. And so again, it's so many things that she has to take into consideration when leaving. And sometimes it's just simple. She's not ready. She does not want to believe that this person is trying to hurt her. And so she's going to do everything in her power. Um, like you asked about my father. Hopefully he would apologize. Hopefully he would never do this again. And oftentimes we set ourselves up for failure when that happens.
Now,
Mm.
a lot of times, unfortunately, we hear about women or men or the victim in the case of domestic violence trying to get help from law enforcement, other agencies, and it's not given to them. So what is the reason a lot of times that these agencies or these organizations are not giving that help? They're not able to move forward to help these people, even though they're being told, I am being abused.
Well, I'll start with shelters for number one. They're always more than not full to capacity. Law enforcement, we have to understand that they're human beings too. And I know for Clayton County, and I referenced it as sensitivity training. And they don't like that term, but that's exactly what it is, because when they go to answer or respond to a call, all the time they don't understand the dynamic. I had a young lady that was killed last year because it was her house. The when law enforcement arrived, excuse me, he painted this picture. They decided to believe him, and they made her leave the home. And so she was out there without anywhere to go. So education and awareness is the key. We are doing this simulation right now throughout the county called Shoots and Ladders, Barriers to Leaving Abusive Relationships. And I guarantee that when these people finish with that, the law enforcement, they have a different perspective, because we're putting you in the forefront of what it's like for a victim to have to leave her home immediately and try to find shelter for her children, to manage her job, her home life. It's a lot. And so when we take them through that simulation, they understand. But the answer to your question is the shelters are overcrowded. And it's a hard, let me tell you, this is the hardest thing that I've ever had to deal with, because the stories. And so I have to take a lot of it into my spirit. So I'm often having to pray. I'm often depressed. I'm often feeling like, what else can I do? Because I feel helpless, but everybody is not like me. And so, if you will, we just have a lot of work to do to get people to understand that this is a serious issue, that women impacted by domestic violence is more than breast cancer, ovarian cancer, and lung cancer combined.
Mm.
And that's serious.
You
Now
know,
with
go ahead,
go ahead.
Jen.
Now with everything that's been going on in this last year and a half or so with COVID, um, families having to remain in the house instead of getting out, doing their normal routine, being in close quarters with people they may not have been spending as much time with. What type of impact is that having on your organization with the numbers of domestic violence victims? Are you seeing an increase because of the sheltering in place and the quarantine and all that?
Yes. And it is a pandemic within a pandemic.
Mm.
We have calls. We now receive calls 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, and it's devastating. Um, I had to close my office for a while because we had so many women calling and saying, "I'm on my way over to your office now." And we had no way of knowing if the perpetrators were following them. And so
Mhm.
I had to think about that as far as caring for myself, but them being in that place, sheltered in place, not being able to get out, it has been a horrible experience for our organization. So I can only imagine as someone that has to live there every day, what they're experiencing. But yes, the CDC is talking about it's a pandemic within a pandemic because you can't go, everything was locked down. So you couldn't go anywhere. The shelters, if you were able, you had to get the COVID test. So we're now, when we send ladies to the shelter, they're still having to get COVID tests. And so that's 3 days until you get the results back. And if you're running from an abusive relationship, that could be very dangerous. So um, mostly women are calling saying, can you please help me find somewhere for me and my children to stay? I can't stay here. And with the situation being as it is, it has been so difficult to move these women. We've been able to put some of them in a hotel, but that's temporary, and trying to find a place for them to um, remain safe. And I've just been trying to, if they are from another state, send them back home or different things. But the main thing is that they have to get out first, and that's what's been so challenging.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, Ms.
Mm.
Vita, what would be some of the reasons why some women are quiet about being in a domestic violent relationship?
Victim shaming, and all of us at some point until we gather a greater understanding, the first thing we say, oh, I wouldn't put up that with that for 1 minute. I would just leave. I would just get out. There's no way I would allow that. But again, with financial resources, low self-esteem, not believing that that person that you've fallen in love with will abuse you, and talking to family and friends. I spoke with the lady today, and she was telling me that her granddaughter, she said, I've been trying to tell her he's not any good and he's not, he's not worth it. And that may be true. But we know how the old saying when we were raising our daughters and our children, mom told you, you talk about them, you're going to draw them closer. And they don't want anybody to believe that, this guy is that bad, so they want to fix him. They want to prove you wrong. And then they just sometimes don't have the financial means to leave. So, but one of the things that I want to say here, while we're on this platform, we have to stop judging, because until we're in that shoes, we may have been in a bad relationship, and I think all of us have before. But to the magnitude where you're with someone and it could be a life and death situation. So just learn to listen, stop judging, and just be a little more sympathetic and try to find means to assist. That's the biggest thing. And I think sharing my stories and others sharing their stories, it helps them to know that they're not in this alone, because it's happening. 1 in 4 women will experience some form of domestic violence in her lifetime. And
Mm.
so as we come out and we're open and transparent about our stories, it gives them the courage to say, okay, I've been trapped. I want to get out. And there's a community of people that understands that I'm not in this alone, and they're out here to help. So that victim shaming, we judge so much. It's hurtful because I hear what people are saying, and it's not always true. It's just a situation and a circumstance.
Yeah.
Mm.
Whew.
So
Okay.
in the event that you have school age children and you're starting to see some things that you're not too happy with as far as a young teenage child. How do you address those type of issues? Because I know teenagers go through domestic violence as well within the schools and with their, relationships and things like that. So I know it starts at a young age, and our teens are just they're going through a lot of things that they don't want to talk about either, that they don't want to discuss with their family or friends and things like that. So how do
Mhm.
you address an issue if you're starting to see some signs within a teen?
Well, one of the things that we have been working on and we've had opposition is that we need to bring awareness and education in the school system. It has been a very difficult task. We have a program called Safe Dates that we present to the children in the community to give them a better understanding. And we just don't talk about relationship dating, community friends and members. We all have to learn to live in this society together. So we try to talk with them and educate them and sit down and listen. I'm sure dating is a lot different. And without talking about it on the show today, I was speaking at a high school and I started out talking about, now that children are getting into relationships, I was corrected, because I used boyfriend and girlfriend for an example.
Mm,
So
Mhm.
things are
mhm,
so different now.
Yeah.
And I was
mhm,
corrected and I thought, oh my God, they're right.
mhm,
So I had to go back and do some more research and do my homework. But the important fact is that they want to talk about it too. So as a community, we have to learn as much as we can. And so when the lines of communication are open, we're ready, we're willing, and we're able to talk to them. But when you asked that question, I thought about a young man that attended one of our workshops with his mother. And as long as I live, I don't think I'll ever forget. He was sitting, we had some things for him for a workshop. And so we're going through the process. And I remember hearing a yell that I don't think I've ever heard in my life. And he said, I cannot, I can't do this. I cannot do this. I'm not strong enough to keep fighting him. That broke my heart in half because he's trying to protect his mother. And he's saying, I'm
mm,
not strong enough. It's nothing I can do. And when I tell you, we had to end the workshop
Mm,
because we wanted to love on him and just make him feel better. But can you imagine at
mm,
9 and 10 years old, you're trying to protect your mama from a grown man that's abusing her, and then you're in turn abused too. So domestic violence is so serious and its impact is devastating on the entire family and the
mhm,
community. I will never forget that young man. And I try to reach out to him now just to see. And sometimes, yes, even when moms are making their decisions,
mhm.
I have to be bold sometimes. You got to think about your children. You got to think about your children and the impact that little boy is going to be reminded of those situations forever.
mhm,
Hmm.
mhm,
You know what? Golly, you know, before the show, I was just reviewing, looking at the statistics, um, and let me not. Well, I was going to say something, but I was looking at the statistics just for the state of Georgia. Everything from the rankings of those who have died as a result of domestic violence, which comes in a number of different forms, as you have so eloquently stated, number of families that it affects, so forth and so on. What legislatively has been done to really help curb a lot of this in terms of awareness and also in terms of expectations of our law enforcement, in terms of what they can do right there on the scene to help mitigate this?
Well, number one, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So I'll
Mhm.
start with asking this question: how much of it have you heard about being Awareness Month? I'm sure not a whole lot. And so with law enforcement, because again, going back to, I think, and this is just me and my
Mhm.
thoughts and the work. I think because so many people experience domestic violence in their homes, because
Right.
it's just not for poor people, or
Right.
it's just not for uneducated or low income people. You have a system that believes so much that this is something that's internal, meaning that should stay in the home. Um, Legislation is not there because, again, it's some of those things that we just don't talk about. In the churches, we're not accepted in the churches. I mean, it's just honest and real talk. In the schools, it's not talked about. And so you have a system, law enforcement, they're so overwhelmed, and they think they have their beliefs, their belief systems too. And some of and a lot of female officers, they would go over and beyond the call of duty. And some of
Mhm.
the males too, let me not say all of them, but for
Mhm.
a majority of the people in this country, we do not recognize domestic violence as being an epidemic, because that's what it is. And until we learn, so everything that you ask me, it should be in place. But unfortunately, it's not. And so that's why we're out in the community trying to gather support, trying to get shows like yours to have us on more often to talk about it, because I'm hoping someone that is listening this evening will have a change of heart, whether they're
Right.
in law enforcement or wherever, and just start to recognize that we need help. These women need help. These children need assistance. And the men and whomever are involved in abusive relationship need the help and support.
So, Ms. Vita, let's talk about the men being victims. Let's talk a
Okay.
little bit about that, please.
Well, I don't know a whole lot about men being victims, but what I do know is that, as I said, with women not talking about it and reporting it, some men were raised not to hit women. And so they're being abused, but they're living to the oath that I'm not supposed to hit a woman. And some men, they're not violent. And so when you have a woman that's violent, then the roles change. But men typically do not report. I think it's 1 in 7 men um, that's in these relationships. And oftentimes it's not reported because, again, of, you know, societal shaming and that sort of thing. Can you imagine sitting in a room with your peers and telling them that your wife or girlfriend beat you? It's
Right.
it's it's just not. So what I am doing, I do partner with a number of men organizations. And so if I do get someone to call and talk about them needing assistance and help, I'll try to refer them over. But again, because we are dedicated to providing resources and services for women, I can't speak a whole lot about. But I do know they don't deserve to be abused either.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so we know that with domestic violence, we have physical abuse. What are some other types of abuse that comes with domestic violence?
Emotional, verbal, financial, even in when you think about the religious aspect of it, that plays a major part too. And I tell people the emotional scars are devastating because if you don't seek the help, then that's something that's going to impact you for the rest of your life. You know, the black eyes and everything, they are horrible. But those physical scars heal. Those emotional scars, if you don't get the help that you need, then you will be in a position that this will plague you for the rest of your life. And we want people to live a whole productive life free of violence. So if I had to say anything, the verbal and emotional abuse, the financial abuse again is 99%. So typically, and I get a lot of women ask me, am I in an abusive relationship because he does not hit me? And so I get them to answer their own questions. You know, we start talking about incidents that's happening in the relationship. And then at the end, I ask the question, do you believe that you're in a abusive relationship? So those are some of the things that when you're starting conversations, you can talk about emotional, psychological, all of those things that impacts a woman's life when she's in an abusive relationship.
On last week's show, we had the opportunity to talk with Dr. Erica Goodwin regarding mental health awareness, which is also October. How would you say, in your experience with your organization, what are you seeing as far as the mental health impact that the young ladies that you're helping are experiencing because of this domestic violence? What are some of the things that you're seeing personally that they're going through with their mental health with this, with their situation?
Thoughts of suicide, depression, low self-esteem, low self-worth, and they feel that it's their fault, because of the abuse. Somehow they relate that to, and it may come from a family situation. Again, what they viewed while they were growing up, what they witnessed, what they had to see. And so I talk about mental health a lot. We have a therapy assistant program. And so anyone that needs that service, we will refer them over because we have to talk about it, so that they can understand and get them whatever help that they need. Domestic violence is so complex. There's so many layers and so many barriers that people have to experience, and mental health issues is just one of them. They get to the point where they are ready to snap and defend themselves, because they haven't talked about it to anyone, because they've been isolated, because they feel nobody is concerned, care about what they're going through. So that's a whole different thing that they're dealing with internally that they have to work through as well. So mental health is a huge part of it.
So, Ms. Vita, you said that affected you and your siblings when you know, witnessed your mom going through the domestic violence. Um, how did it affect you personally in your relationships?
Growing up, well, when I started my relationships, I was a people pleaser. And I could not stand the fact that anybody did not like me or accept me. And that came from me thinking that I'm doing all of these things so that my dad would accept me. And
Mm.
so I had to learn that everybody is not worthy of me. It's not necessarily that I'm doing something different or wrong, but that's one of the biggest thing. I was a huge people pleaser, and it did something to me when I thought that someone didn't like me. And it bothered me to the point where I just wanted to, what am I doing that you don't like about me? What could I possibly do? I try to be a team player. I'm a giving, caring person, and I just did not understand. And so that was one of the main things that I had to work on internally. And then as I worked on that, then the script kind of flipped. Okay, I ain't taking no mess off nobody, you know? And and
Right.
Mhm.
and so if you come at me, I'm coming at you, but I need for you to know today, you will not put your hands on me. You will not speak to me in a manner in which
Mhm.
I do not deserve. And I had to tone that down too, because I was paranoid, you know?
Mhm.
Okay, well, here comes the hit. And I think that once I kind of balance those two things out, um, I may still have a few issues every now and then, being transparent and honest. But I try to work on it. But yeah, it did a number on me. And I had to really, especially with that people pleaser thing, I had to really, really, really work on myself. And it will ruin your esteem. It will.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Did you see the same sorts of things manifest themselves with your siblings as well?
Well, my youngest brother, I'll say with him, he's very withdrawn. He does not go a lot of places. He does not trust a lot of people. He just kind of stays to himself. My older sister and brother, um, they both been divorced. I think once the relationship maybe opposed to working on it, and I
Mhm.
may be wrong, they just go ahead and opt out, if you would, opposed to maybe working on it, maybe, and then they may work on it. And
Mhm.
then after they figure that it's not a good result, they go ahead and end the relationship. My oldest brother and sister, I think they both been married and divorced. And that could be a lot of people, for a number of reasons.
Now, you said that you have a therapy assistance program within your organization. Do you also partner with or provide any type of self-defense programs within sister empowerment?
Well, the self-defense aspect, we do at certain points. Um, we've conducted a few workshops, but not overall, because the self-defense aspect is good, but the mental aspect is what we want to focus on. We want women to know that once you deal with the issue, once you work towards that, and then the self-defense part, it will come, because it is important for a number of reasons. But we want to focus on the mental health side, getting yourself together,
Mhm.
talking about the root cause. That was a good question about my siblings, and maybe we need to have a conversation about that. I do know that, and I wanted to double back a little bit. that when my father died, um, I was the one that tried to work with my siblings to say, okay, we still have to bury him. We still have to do certain things, but they weren't trying to hear it. They
Mhm.
just were not trying to hear it. And so that has been a challenge as well. But violence, self-defense, we don't want to give a misconception if we teach you self-defense, so now you're going to go around and karate chop everybody and be there. We want you to deal with the issue. I don't like violence.
Mhm.
I do not, for a number of reasons. My husband was robbed and killed in the city of Atlanta. And so I've gone through a lot of things, but I want peace.
Mhm.
I want us to be able to live a peaceful life.
Mhm. And you're absolutely right about that as far as the peace aspect is concerned. I mean, the thought of anyone having to, continuously defend themselves physically or, emotionally, anything like that is heartbreaking. But one of the reasons why I ask is because so many times, even once the victim is able to escape the situation, the perpetrator continues to come to them, to follow them, to be in their space. And so that's why I was asking about the self-defense, because even if you don't necessarily stay in that environment, sometimes that environment comes back to you.
mhm.
You may go to a family member's home, you may find another place to live, you may go to a shelter, and then you find yourself being faced with that same situation because they will not leave you alone. So that's one of the reasons I was asking about the self-defense aspect. And then I also would like to ask you, when a victim is able to get some type of impact from law enforcement, whether they're able to get a restraining order, whether they're able to actually get the person arrested and have them sent to jail, is there any type of update that they receive in the event that their perpetrator does get sentenced to time in prison? Are they notified if they're going to be
Yes.
released or if they're going to be put back into the community? Okay.
Yes, sometimes they are, and sometimes the system fails. And, so that's one of the things that's very important. They should know if they're being released. And
Mhm.
it's still a work in progress too. We're working on that because sometimes it slips to the crack and they're out on the street and the victims have not been notified. Sometimes they do, and unfortunately, it's not always. But let me say a little bit more about the self-defense portion. One of the
Mhm.
things that if we do self-defense, we need to tell women that documentation is so important. And if you come from a law enforcement background, if you end up killing someone or hurting them in any way and it's not documented, you're going to be held responsible for
Mhm.
that person. And so, the self defense is important, but they need to know too documentation that you are defending yourself. And you know how you get fed up and you just snap and you just go for it. So those things are really important. And that's why we just want to talk and share with them that it's important that you document and don't turn to violence like that other person. Just try to go through the process. Um, Safety planning is key. A lot of times, and I get women in regard to the self defense, they may say, um, "Well, I took out a protective order on you, and I'm going back to," and give them all the information that they
Mhm.
need,
Mhm.
you know, and that's what happened to the young lady daughter that was killed last December. We worked with her and finally convinced her to get a temporary protective order. We explained to her not to disclose the information. She
Mhm.
got right on the phone and called the abuser and said, "I'm getting ready to take out a protective order on you. I'm on my way right now." And he went to the house. Ugh, He went to the house and killed her daughter as she was taking out that protective. So we have to tell, and I know that self-defense and retaliation and all of that stuff, it could put you in so much danger. So all of those things are just something to take into consideration.
We only have a few more moments before we have to end the show. So, Ms. Vita, you want to talk a little bit about a call to action?
Yes, yes. This is important, and this is what we've been doing. Again, take the time to check out those people that's in your life. Talk to them, check on them, because all of us know someone that may be experiencing domestic violence. Educate yourself on safety planning, temporary protective orders, the shelters, other resources that one may need. And so when they come to you, learn how to talk to a family member or friend. If someone is going through an abusive relationship, it's important that you say the right things so that you can keep the lines of communication open. And the final thing, if you are going to assist, make sure that you help them get all their important papers together. Make sure that you are a person that they can trust and believe and confide in. And make sure that they document each and every incident that occurs. Take pictures. And let's love and support these ladies because they need it. It's important. And again, I know all of us know someone. Just think about it, and you can make a tremendous impact on helping a woman transition out of an abusive relationship.
And Ms. Vita, you're in the Clayton County, Georgia location, correct?
Yes, Clayton County, and we do Henry and Spalding and the surrounding communities. And so, but we get calls from all over. And if we do, I would like to refer them to other agencies that could help. But I try to help as many people as possible. I don't care where they're from because it's important. And so we are here. We are service. Our website is www.sistersempowerment.org. Our information to contact me is you can reach us on our email at info@sistersempowerment.org. And our office number is 770-909-0376. And we are here to try to help you and those that's impacted by domestic violence transition out safely and healthy.
So, Ms. Vita, are your services offered 24 hours a day, or do you have a set hour?
No, ma'am. We're sometimes it is, but no, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday would be ideal. And always, if you are in an emergency, please call 911.
Right.
The National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-SAFE, and that's 7233. 1-800-799-7233. It's the National Domestic Violence Hotline.
Well, thank you so very much, Ms. Vita. We really appreciate you being here today. This was a very emotional show for me, but I'm so glad that, you're here and you gave us some information, and we shared a lot of information with everyone today. And like you and I had discussed earlier, we're going to continue on with these conversations about domestic violence awareness. We're going to continue on. It's not just domestic violence awareness shouldn't just be for the month of October. It should be always.
Right.
We all need to be
Mhm.
aware of what's going on in our communities. So thank you so very much for joining us, and thank you all for joining
you,
us
Ms.
as
Vida.
well. And just remember, everything you heard and everything we said was our point of view. We'll see you next time.